Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Bienvenidos, welcome, and I'd like to welcome all of you to this Healing Generations podcast that's part of the Healing Generations Institute of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today and invite you just to begin by being present wherever you're at. We want to thank the Creator for another day of life. And we also want to acknowledge all the ancestors, all of our ancestors, all of your ancestors, the ancestors from all around that have done so much, prepared us, gave us so many teachings, so many lessons, but also struggled along the way. So we want to invite them into this space with us today to guide us and maybe be here and listen and share and even heal a little bit as well. You know, we are so excited that you've chosen to join us, and we invite you to come with all of yourself and be in this journey with us together. And today I'm really honored and pleased and feel my heart is full because I have a good friend, consider a sister, a wonderful, amazing wisdom keeper, example of exemplary community, heart-centered, spirit-led work, who exemplifies, love for people, and love for truth, and love for justice, and love for interconnectedness of all people. And who I'm talking about is Ana Pérez, and she's has a lot of experience, many years of doing this work. Formerly she also went to UC San Diego, and I believe got a degree in journalism, and then at Berkeley as well. So she's got that formal education, and then she's got that la educación that comes from, the world and from grandmas and different people along the way. She's guiding the Latino Equity Project, which does amazing work all across the country and all across the world, but bringing a lot of teachings and a lot of healing and a lot of blessings to so many people, and helping us all to heal a little bit and decolonize and come more into the present of the sacredness of all people. So I want to just invite Ana. Thank you so much for being with us today, and just invite you to greet the listeners today.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you so much for having me here, Jerry. You know that I have a lot of love and respect for you. And to the listeners, I just want to say thank you for your commitment to your own learning and your own healing. And thank you for being here.
So as we begin, we always begin with that conocimiento, whether we do it culturally or we walk in somebody's house, or whether we begin a círculo, we always, begin by just sharing a little bit about who we are. And I want to invite you just to share a little bit about who you are, Ana, and your people and your journey, and, who is Ana Pérez and that journey that you've come on.
Thank you. So I am the daughter of Maria Esther Pérez Torres and René Mauricio Castellanos Palma, who never recognized me as his child, and who contributed to me being alive. I am the granddaughter of Felix Pérez and Cruz Torres, and my great-grandmother is Francisca Melara, and great-grandpa is Dionisio Pérez. And so those are my people. I'm a Pipil Nahuatl and Shorty Maya from El Salvador. The decolonized name is Cuscatlan, our real name. And my people come from a small little village in the department of La Libertad, which means liberty. And they come from Huizucar, which means the road of thorns in Pipil Nahuatl language. My people, I consider the rough oceans my people, the lush rainforest, my people, the white-tailed deer, my people, the red clay of my land is also alive for me. And now I have the honor and privilege to call my people the Douglas fir and the bishop pines and the elk that I live around in Point Reyes, California. And so I also consider them part of my beings. My people are also like you, Jerry. You are my people because you seek connection to all. And my people are those who like seek the dignity of all people and the connectivity and the connection and love between all people. We who understand our sacred responsibility to each other and to the planet. And so my people are Black people, Indian people, people of color, white people, queer people, trans people. And so it's about that sacred connection for me.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah. You just brought us into a really beautiful space, mentioning all that, the interconnection of all those living things and that are all around us, and connection to all kinds of people from different lands too. I wonder if you could share a little bit about your journey, you growing up and getting here, and what was that journey was about? How was it for you? And what were the lessons you learned along that journey? They teach us a lot. So
Even with you saying those words, I'm already having a lot of feelings. My journey's been one of incredible struggle. As a little girl, I didn't understand that because for me, we were playing with sticks and in the dirt, and that was joyful. And looking back, and thinking of seeing my mother like get thinner and thinner because she couldn't eat because she was giving all the food to us. And going days without eating, because we were, she was a single mother in the middle of this war, a poor Indian peasant who came to the city who was trying to make ends meet. So that's part of my journey, right? And so part of my journey was believing that I was a descendant of uneducated, worthless people, believing the lies that that I had no future, and not knowing the ways that my culture was taken from me, my language was taken from me, and very much like the idea of being without a tongue, being without a way to make the sounds, understand my people's cosmovision, understanding the world. All of that was taken from me. And so as a little girl, I experienced a genocidal war. I experienced what it meant to be without a father and without a mother, and to feel the pain of knowing that my mother was caring for white children in the US, and that I had no one to care for me. And so, really early on, I could understand the links between class privilege, race, and the continued putting down of indigenous lives. And, I also grew up in like this incredibly rich family, people who understood the land, who knew how to grow milpa, and who knew how to grow the Three Sisters, and who, could like look out into the forest and say, we can make a little soup with that herb, and everyone will be fed, and so there were those two pieces of my existence, and my grandparents, they really tended the land and they care for their gardens. And so I also grew up with a love of plants and garden. And although I didn't quite find it until a little later on, because coming to the US as an undocumented child when I was 11 in the trunk of a car, it took me a long time to get over or to understand the wounding that all that created in me. And so I came to gardening the last 10 years of my life.
Wow. As you're speaking, I'm feeling sensations of this little girl, it just really resonates with me, where the spirit of who you really were connected to your people and to that land, the deception that that is for many of us is given to us, is indoctrinated in us, And then you mentioned being in the trunk of a car, and I don't think people recognize the difficulty of undoing those memories. And, so what was it along that way? What was it along that journey? What were the teachings or values or lessons or blessings that allowed you to persevere, allowed you to, because obviously, you're not explaining, but I know because I know some of the history and the culture that you saw a lot, you experienced a lot, you felt a lot. But what was the medicine? What were the teachings? What were the traditions that kept you alive and kept you going and kept you moving forward?
Mm-hmm. I think the understanding of what it takes to grow living organisms around you, the understanding that like a seed needs to be planted underground and the seed needs to be tended. And so
Mm,
water needs to be shared with the seed, and so I feel like I started to do my own healing by first understanding like, who am I? Like, what
mm,
is the seed, that creator that my ancestors have given me? Because there is the live being, this human being, but there's also this desire to thrive and to be understood and to be honored. And I think that those were the seeds that I got given. And so like I just started to slow it down. Like once I was able to access the truth about who I am and the truth about my country's history, and the fact that I was not an illegal, right? That I
mm,
was an indigenous person from the South coming to my siblings to the North, and
mm,
that journey had been happening for thousands of years before the Europeans came. And that in that journey, right, like the Oaxacan Mesoamericans were able to share corn with people in the north and south, and that Incas were able to share tools with people in the like that. We have always been connected. So I
mm,
feel like understanding that I too am like a plant, and that there were seeds that were in me from the moment I was born, and that as I became aware and opened my eyes to the fullness of who I am and who my people are, that then I needed to start tending that,
mm,
and so tending it through reading, tending it through crying, tending it through like walking through a forest and listening to it. And then I understood that like a plant is not, a plant gives something. And I, as a human being, there's something that I must give to others. And so I started to think about like, what are the gifts that I can actually harvest and give to other people?
mm,
And then there's like the preparing of that, right? And some of that has been like going through the fire, like you know, in my lies or the lies that were fed to me, I was supposed to be some sort of a corporate leader or like a
mm,
stellar New York Times writer as a journalist, and I tried that. I tried to enter the white world, and I tried. And because, they all say that I'm talented, whatever that means, like I
mm,
feel like I'm more heart based. I tried to play that game. And what I faced was a lot of slamming down because people were not ready to like come from a heart center space. They
mm,
wanted me to believe the lies of upper mobility, of achievement in that way. And so to me, like those were the fires.
mm,
I ended up getting fired from a foundation job because the white women who led it could not understand my gifts. And the way that they fired me was incredibly cruel and
mm.
corporate like. And this was like supposed to be a social justice foundation.
Wow.
And to me, like, going through some of those fires were what allowed me to really cook up my seed or my
Mm,
harvest or the fruit that I had to give. And it helped me really figure out like, what is the offering? What is the food that I'm giving to the world? And
mm,
so even though those going through those fires were incredibly painful, like when I got fired that time, I was in bed crying for almost a year
mm,
because I couldn't believe that people would treat me that way.
mm, mm,
And yet that's what allowed me to find this gift that I'm offering to other humans and to this planet.
mhm. Wow. It's amazing, and I also know that recently you went back home, and there were some blessings and some connections that you made there that I think probably watered those seeds much more. And can you talk a little bit about your recent trip back to your homeland?
Yes, yes. So, how I said that the last 10 years have been really learning about gardening and stepping into the gifts that my ancestors gave me, that has also been about me stepping in and naming my people and lifting all the ways that I have always been. Like this is not new. Like my creating community, my feeding people, my being in connection with life around me. I didn't learn it 10 years. I've been doing that my whole life. And so now I'm just calling it what it is, which is my indigenous wisdom coming through. And so in that journey, I made contact with other native Pipil Nahuatls that are around me in the Bay Area. And they connected me. Julio Leiva, who is Izalqueño, he's from the Pipil Nahuatl Izalco people, has deep roots and connections to the government of the commons in Izalco. And when he knew I was going back, he connected me to the government of the commons, and I got the honor to go and be in space with them. And it was an incredibly moving experience for me, because to be back in the lands of my people, to be able to smell the earth, to hear the birds, the calling of the birds, to see the trees and the nature and the warmth of the soil already was such a healing experience for me. And then to be welcomed and to be seen and to be acknowledged and to be brought in was very moving. And I also got the experience they meet every Sunday. So the whole community comes into this communal space, and it's called the Commons because it belongs to all of them and to all of us. And so I sat, I met with the governor and or the mayor, and then I sat and just watched people coming, and saw how they were being playful with each other, and they were speaking. Some were speaking in Nahuatl, and they were joking, and it just felt like coming home. So I just sat quietly for about 45 minutes waiting as people gathered. And it was probably the most healing 45 minutes that I've had in a long time. Just to experience it without it being focused on me, but to experience it as if I wasn't there. And then they had their meeting, and they told the story. The day of the cross had just passed, and in like Catholicism, it's supposed to be the cross that Jesus was, crucified on. But in our indigenous practice, is the celebration of the four directions, and the study of the sky. And that Mayan folks, Aztecs people too, did a lot of study of the universe and the movement of the astrology and the movement of the planets. And so they early on divided the sky into 4 quadrants so they could understand how planets were moving. And so to then share the knowledge that, what I perceived as a Catholic ritual that my grandmother did for the whole time, that I've grown up, to understand that it was not just about this cross, but that they were disguising deep knowledge of thousands of years and honoring their deep knowledge through the celebration of the cross. So that was quite an experience. And the day after, I went and spent time with children at a small Santo Domingo de Guzman is a small little town in Sonsonate, which is where a lot of our Pipil Nahuatl people are still thriving. And there's a library, a children's library. And so I came and I brought a bunch of books for the children. And about 20 children showed up, and an elder showed up, and he shared a song with me, and I got to read to the children. And it was just an incredibly joyous visit. So I had both, the deeply emotional coming home, and then the remembering the joy and the children. So it was a very lovely visit.
Wow.
Thank you for asking.
No, that's amazing, and it really speaks to the importance of us connecting to our ancestral self. That lives within us, regardless of where we're at in the world. And once we come home, the people just embrace us because it's a familiar, interconnected spirit that is about, honoring people and honoring blessings, and I think that in this world that we live in, the colonized thought and the sense of separating people based on land and a whole bunch of things, skin color and hierarchy, all kinds of different things, really represents a deep wound, a wounded thought, a wounded narrative that has brought so much pain to this world and so much pain to many communities. And I know that the work that you do, your sacred purpose work, really is about healing that wound, and really is about deconstructing those barriers and creating space for people to really begin to come home, to the true teachings that the ancestors and the Creator want for us. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your work, because I've had the privilege of working with you in various projects, and it's been a blessing for me just to see the multidimensional wisdom and facility and skill that you have in bringing spirit alive, and bringing spirit alive in other people, and helping them know themselves, but also heal. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about your work, which is, I know it's multi-layered and multi-dimensional, but whatever you'd like to share would be really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I see my sacred responsibility during this lifetime to support, to bridge the impassable ravine that greed, has created to separate people, right? So whether it's race or genderism or sexism or immigration status, right? Like that greed and Western supremacy has really brought this notion of separation, and therefore of less than, like someone subordinate, and this desire to dominate the other. So I have really, I want that to end, and I think that if we all can work to undo those feelings within ourselves, like of superiority, when I feel superior to somebody else, when I feel that sense to dominate, that is poison, right? Because I know that we are one. You are the other me. We are one people. We are one humanity. And I came out of it from the learning anti-racism. Like I told you, that horrible experience of being fired and being treated so poorly led me to try to understand why that took place. And it helped me to understand like systems of oppression and why these white women would treat me in this way. And from that, I was like, oh my God, I think all people of color, all Black people, all Native people, all people of color need to understand the systemic racism that's happening. And then the behaviors, because they're really subtle and sometimes they're hard to like anytime you have walked away going, huh, did that just really happen? What happened?
Yeah.
It's like, because we can't believe it, because we are people who like see you as my sibling, see you as my brother, so for me that was so shocking, and so I devoted my life to supporting people of color, Black and Indigenous and people of color, to understand it so that we can have choice about how we engage with it, so that we can be free in this moment, right? Like we don't have to play their game, and that includes white people, right? Because those who dominate are injured too, right?
Yeah.
And they may not understand that they are injured. And because they're attacking us, it may feel like they're the enemy, but they too have been colonized into white supremacy. And the only way forward is to have all of us find our humanity. And so my work starts from that principle, centering love. And so I don't take work with people who I don't think I can love. Right. So, and I've worked with like pro-Trump white Texans, and I find a way to love them. Because if I can't love them, they can't learn from me. So that's some of the work I do. And I do it first and foremost for our Latinx community, because, we need to expel all the lies that have been fed to us. We need to reclaim who we truly are on this earth and on this continent.
Yeah.
We need to find our links back to our indigeneity so that our ancestors can rejoice in us naming them.
Wow. I'm resonating with what you said there. If I can't love them, then I can't really. Do you say work with them or teach them or? But that,
Teach them, work
yeah,
with them.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's such a profound statement. And because I know in the schools where we work, I often ask teachers, do you like these kids? I mean, because they're teaching them, but it doesn't mean they like them. And then I say, well, do you love them? And it's almost like I'm asking them, this incredibly intrusive question. But I really appreciate you lifting up the sense of loving all people, and our inability to love or see people in a loving way or treat them in a loving way is really from that woundedness and that those wounds that are now we've embedded in the way we treat others or see others or work with others as well. And so I know that the work isn't easy, and you then talk about us as a people, Latinx people, right? I wonder if you can speak a little bit to what is that work that we need to do among ourselves, because I know you do a lot of work, internally among our own people. Can you talk a little bit about that? Just some of the things that we need to reconsider or shed or integrate.
So, first of all, like Latinx people in the US, oh my goodness, like, we are a big old scrambled of everything, right? And depending on what region of the country you are, you find yourself with different people. Like Latinx people in New Mexico think of themselves as Spanish or Hispanic. And then you go to New York and they're Puerto Rican and they're Dominican. And so, first of all, we need to understand the regional differences. And then within that, like how we were racialized in our country of origin, because it doesn't matter if you go to El Salvador, Mexico, Colombia, or Chile. I've been and worked in all those places. There is racism happening all throughout the country. Like racism is not just a U.S. issue; it's a global issue. But how it plays out in Mexico is very different than how it plays out in Colombia, right? And so understanding that, and the one thing that threads it all is anti-Blackness and indigenous erasure, right? Like colonization. So, it was a policy in the early 1900s and late 1800s to have any child born in any village anywhere be called mestizo. And it's written in the books. So they're like, we're going to start calling everyone mestizo because then they're not going to claim Indian. And if they don't claim Indian, then what land rights do they have? Right? So the last remaining communal lands that existed, shifting the way that they were talking about us and the way they named us was a way of not just taking away our culture, but it was also taking away our land, and taking away our language. And so we need to understand the history of why they've given us different names, like Hispanic, Latino, even Latinx, right? Like, and we have the challenge, like, what do we call ourselves, with such different histories, national histories, engaging with two different colonizers, four colonizers, right? The Portuguese, the Spanish, the English, and also the French, right? Like all those countries played a role in dividing our peoples. And then we have the legacy of enslavement and Black people being brought to the Americas. And then we have all the different waves of migration. So we are an incredibly complex people, and we have to sort through. And like if you look at indigeneity, whether we're talking about Minnesota or El Salvador or the Mapuche, we believe that we are one people and that we are one humanity. And so, how do we reconcile the complexity of the modern world, our histories, and how do we indigenize and lift up the amazing contributions that Black people have made to the continent and to our lives? In LA, where my mother is, very close to where you live, I go into her neighborhood and the tension between Black and Latino people is palpable.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like a lack of us knowing who we are and that they are us and we are them.
Yeah, that's as you share that, and I've experienced that too. It's very painful for me because I grew up during the 50s, 60s in Compton and Watts in South Central LA, and we were family. We were neighbors. We hung out together. We ate together. We partied together. And not that there weren't the elements of racism within sometimes the structures of the narrative of our family, but we saw each other as human. We saw each other as valuable. We saw each other as extended kinship, if you will. So now I see it several generations later, and we see that the divide. And I think what you talk about in terms of love and interconnectedness really is the work. Really is the work. How do we learn to love, first of all, ourselves? Because if you don't want to acknowledge who you really are, and then love yourself, then how is it you're going to be able to love someone else? And so I think the journey that you talk about, that you went on in terms of, acknowledging yourself and even going home recently and being acknowledged and embraced so that you could love yourself even deeper. Then really, talking about that seed, you have so much more to give as you come back, but as we move on, what do you think the challenges are for us? As we move through right now, we've been through an administration that was, a big challenge for us. And now we're moving, in a different era. I mean, COVID just happened, and that really kind of threw many of us, all of us really, into a time of reflection and transition. What are the challenges for us now? What do we really need? What do we really need to be focusing on as a people as we move forward?
I think we need to be focusing on the youth and the children. If we can expedite the seeding process, like that, if we can nurture those seeds early on, and if we can take away all the impediments for their thriving, like the oppressive school systems that don't see the brilliance of our children, the police who are policing our streets who don't see the joy and the playfulness and the traviesos, like children are traviesos. That's what they are, And so if they interpret that as criminal, right, like those are barriers for our children to be well and to do well. Reminding our children of their sacred connection to the elders, and to the youngers, like reminding us that, that we are a chain, right? Like I'm this link, but right behind me is this link, and I have a sacred connection to that link, and to make sure that that link is strong, and I have a sacred connection to this other link. And so I think that passing down the knowledge and making it more visible and nourishing and focusing on the children is really important. Obviously there's like crisis around I lost my beloved uncle, father figure to COVID. And what that's made visible, dramatically visible, is the health inequities that our comunidad faces.
Right.
And the fact that they're frontline workers. And, so we have that crisis, and we have the crisis of children being taken at the border, and the lack of resolution of the 600 children. We need to connect that to the finding of the bodies at boarding schools for Native U.S. and Canadian children. It's the same issue. It's, an invading force, Western supremacy, the U.S., separating our families and not allowing the sacred connections that Native peoples have had for millennia across borders. And so, yes, we have all these critical issues. And so as we tend to that, And as we tend to like addressing anti-Blackness in our communities and Native erasure in our communities, we need to bring the children, and we need to center the precious, future to be able to realize, the 7 generations that are coming ahead.
Since you mentioned the children, I want to invite you, as someone that carries a lot of wisdom and has walked this road for a long time, approaching that stage of being an elder yourself. I was wondering if you could share some consejos or some advice to, that 11-year-old girl that came over, that 18-year-old girl that entered. I mean, what would you tell her? What would you tell these young people that you wish somebody would have told you? What would you share with them to prepare them for this journey, for this walk in life, so they could, be ready to deal with whatever life gave them?
You already said one of them, right? Which is like loving yourself.
Uh-huh.
Loving myself requires me to know who I really am. So I think like it starts with that journey to say, where did my people come from? Where do I come from? What is the history of my people? What are the ways that they practice things that make me who I am? And I think that first, like, know who you are, because once you know who you are, no one can take that from you. And once you know who you are, you can actually stand in dignity, right? Like that when I say I'm a Pipil Nahuatl person, I can hear my ancestors rejoicing because I'm standing in that dignity of who I am. And not to confuse dignity with pride. Pride is about me caring about what you think about me. Like, and if you violated me, then I'm gonna, be in a battle with you. No, I'm talking about dignity of it doesn't matter what you think about me. I know who I am. And so I think that loving, discovering, defining that grounded dignity is really important. I also think that sometimes I used to think of myself as like, oh, this poor person with all these cargas, like, oh, and to just actually like in my dignity, just to see that every carga, everything that has challenged me, it's actually a gift because every one of those things has polished me into like a more beautiful stone, a more beautiful seed. Like my seed has had to be resilient through all that. Like, yes, I was in rocky soil and I grew. Yes, I was like in watery soil and I became a water plant. And so I think that understanding that the biggest gift our ancestors have given us is resiliency. We were not meant to be alive today, and we are alive. And in many places we are thriving, and we are discovering that we're 5 fingers, right, of like the native nation across the hemisphere. We are the 7th generation. We are the young people coming. We are the southern natives. We are the white adjacent natives. We are the Black natives. People who understand indigeneity and connection to land. That's yet another growing people. And so in many ways, like, that is due to the resiliency and the strength of our seed as native people to this continent.
Wow. Well, I want to sincerely thank you, for who you are, and for the journey that you've walked, and for the struggles that you've been through, that you've been willing to face and embrace and transform, and then to share with others, to be willing to speak truth, even when it's not easy, even when it's painful, and to speak truth when you know it's going to be a difficult road. Because the polishing of your stone, and of your spirit, of your heart, has touched me. It's made me a better me. And I've seen you do your medicine work, and it touches a lot of people. And so, for those that are listening, I just want to lift up that journey. And if you wherever you find yourself in your journey, recognize that the ancestors are right there with us. And that your ancestors, even if you don't know them cognitively in your mind, your spirit recognizes them. And in that we have spent a little bit of time here today, as we close today, take a couple of minutes before you get on the next Zoom call or do the next thing, and really give thanks for those ancestors, and give thanks for those blessings, and give thanks for those teachings, and give thanks for teachers like Ana Pérez, because the teachers are there, and we give thanks for you as teachers, and you as healers, and you as guides, and the more that we can interconnect the lessons and the blessings, the better opportunities for our children to know who they are and love who they are, and the better they're going to be able to play and laugh and be enjoy, because that's what this is about as well. We have to be able to enjoy life and love life and just sometimes party and have a good time, and I think that's part of the journey as well. So Anna, I want to thank you once again, for taking the time. Thank you for your work, and I look forward to our continued work together. I want to thank the listeners for taking the time to listen. Send in some feedback and reflections. Share the podcast with others, and connect with Ana. You'll see on the notice there the connection to the work that she does, and if you want to reach out, you can reach out to her. But does amazing work, and is an example of our ancestors' dreams coming true. Thank you all so much, and may the Creator continue to bless you, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bless God.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.